intro fade in from silence. The gentle sound of waves lapping against a distant shore, a faint breeze, hello. A place where the sea met cliffs, and the cliffs held trenches, where men dug into the earth not to build, but to survive. And welcome. Tonight, we're going to take a quiet step into a chapter of history often remembered with reverence, but seldom fully felt. This is Gallipoli. 1915. It wasn't the largest front of the First World War. It wasn't the most strategically vital, but it was uniquely human. You don't need to stay awake. In this slow, measured journey, you'll drift through the sounds and textures of one of the most unforgiving environments ever endured by soldiers, from both sides of the war. You'll listen to the whispers of a forgotten poet, trace the outlines of lost trinkets buried beneath the cliffs, and pause, briefly, in velvet halls, where polished boots never touched the mud. As always, you're free to drift in and out. Let the rhythm of history carry you off to sleep. And now, let's begin with the sun rising over the Aegean and a trench, carved by hand. Why you wouldn't last a day in the trenches of Gallipoli, gentle ambient wind. A quiet, steady heartbeat of history begins to pulse. Imagine you're waking up in a trench carved into the side of a cliff. The ground beneath you is not earth, but compacted dust, chalky and dry, sticking to your skin, your clothes, your breath. You didn't sleep? Not really, just dozed. A restless kind of half-consciousness, interrupted by the drone of insects, the cough of a man nearby, and the ever-present whisper of the sea below, taunting you with its coolness. You haven't bathed in weeks. You're not sure what day it is. Your uniform is stiff with salt and sweat. Your boots, always damp, always too tight, always too tight. And around you, others are stirring, quietly, automatically. Men from the other side of the world. You stretch, slowly, feeling each ache and bruise. The sun rises over Gallipoli like a punishment. Too dry. You're exposed. Just enough to worry. There is no cover here. The cliffs offer shade only in brief, shifting patches. The heat begins early and stays late. The trench you occupy isn't deep. It can't be. The terrain is too hard. A sniper is already awake. Somewhere in the hills. You don't know his name. You never will. You know only this. To stand upright here is to gamble. So you crouch. And you wait. He slept badly, too. His eyes are rimmed red. There's movement nearby. A young Ottoman soldier, perhaps 19, maybe 22, tugs at the knot in his shirt collar. He's not so different from you. His trench smells the same, of damp tobacco, rusted iron, and the ever-present rot of what lies just beneath the surface. Bodies, not yet buried, or only half so, lend the air a heaviness. You've stopped noticing the flies, They're part of the rhythm now. They coat your food before your hands reach it. They land on your lips before you speak. The rations come, late and sparse. Hard biscuits, tea, some of it crawling with weevils. You eat anyway. Hunger overrides taste. Water is precious. You've learned to ration your thirst. A single sip can be a luxury. Too much, and your stomach rebels. You dream about oranges, about rain, but mostly you dream about silence. Midday brings more heat. The walls of the trench shimmer. A mirage of comfort just beyond reach. You crouch under a scrap of canvas stretched between two bayonets. It does nothing. A shell lands. Not nearby, but close enough. Dust showers down like a grim confetti. No one flinches anymore. The new recruits do, of course. But they'll learn. The ground trembles. And then it is quiet again. This is how most days pass here. Not in battle, but in this waiting, this heavy, grinding routine of filth, fear, letters from home, if they come at all, are damp, smudged. Not because it brings hope, but because it reminds him that somewhere the world is still spinning. You try not to look up. The blue of the sky is cruel. So clean. So untouched. As if mocking the muck below. You think, sometimes, about the men just meters across from you.
The Ottomans.
They smell the same gunpowder. They suffer the same thirst. Sometimes, you think you hear them laugh. A strange comfort. Proof that someone else is awake. Still human. At night, the air cools. Slightly. Just enough to bring out the chill in your bones. You wrap yourself in a blanket, stiff with grime. You press your back to the earth. You close your eyes, and still, the guns rumbled in the distance, a low, constant lullaby of menace. Tomorrow will be the same. Unless, of course, it isn't. You lie still, and you listen. The sea below sparkles faintly in the moonlight. The stars impossibly bright blink above a land that has seen too much. And the trench, your trench, holds you, not in comfort, but in necessity. You sleep. Half dreaming of home, of quiet, of somewhere else soft, ambient fade. And now the hush before transition. Whenever you're ready, we'll move gently into our next chapter. A story not of trenches, of strategy, and of a quiet man standing tall on the cliffs. The quiet courage of Mustafa Kemal. From officer to icon fade in gently. From the hush of segment 1. A slow breeze moves through dry grass. soft footsteps on stony ground. Now, let us shift our gaze. Step quietly away from the grime of the trench and look up toward the hills. On the ridgelines above the chaos, a man stands. Here, he does not shout. He does not pace. He watches. He listens. He decides. And then, his name, 1915, is Mustafa Kemal. At the time, little known beyond his circle of officers. But in Gallipoli, not loudly, not all at once, sharper minds. On the hills above Anzac Cove, he found himself in command of the 19th Division, but with the steady presence of a commander who refused to blink when the horizon caught fire. Mustafa Kemal was not a man of great stature. Medium height, calm face, eyes that saw detail where others saw blur. He had studied in European-style military schools. Sharp uniforms, books lined his quarters. But more importantly, and the cliffs echoed with rifle fire, he understood maps. And here it was April, and the land was trembling under foreign boots. Quickly, calmly. When the first waves of Anzac troops, soldiers from Australia and New Zealand, stormed the beaches, confusion reigned. Ottoman units broke ranks, was not officially ordered to act. Orders were unclear. The sun was rising. Mustafa Kemal, but he saw the risk. He saw the moment, and he moved. He climbed to Chunuk Bair, and when he met fleeing Ottoman soldiers, disoriented. I am not ordering you to attack. I am ordering you to die. Not out of cruelty, not for glory, but because he understood something few others did. This hill, this moment, would decide everything. The men followed, perhaps because of his tone, not loud, not desperate, but firm, certain. A tone that said, and held the line, not with brilliance, but with stillness. Over the weeks that followed, Kemal learned something rare in war. Trust. His soldiers noticed that he never stayed behind. He watched the shells fall with his own eyes. He ate the same food, drank the same sour water, wore the same dirt on his boots, and when he spoke, it was brief, precise. A word here, a nod there, a message carried by glance more than by command. One story, soft and simple. In August, during the height of the Anafarta offensive, a fragment from a British shell struck the pocket over his heart. The impact bruised him badly. But the shrapnel was stopped by a pocket watch. He smiled briefly, then continued with his orders. The watch was shattered. He was not. But the men saw it, and in the quiet way of soldiers, they passed the story on. This was the pattern of Mustafa Kemal's leadership. not built on speeches or spectacle, on calm in the face of collapse. While others measured success in ground gained, he measured it in morale preserved. He didn't speak of victory. He spoke of holding, of enduring. The British called Gallipoli a campaign. Kemal treated it as a test, and he passed it. Not without cost, not without sleepless nights and empty hands, but with a strange kind of grace. Years later, when the war had ended and the empires had cracked, when Turkey was reborn and Mustafa Kemal became He still remembered these hills, this sun, this trench line etched into memory. He said, of the foreign soldiers who died there, those heroes that shed their blood and lost their lives. You are now lying in the soil of a friendly country. You, the mothers who sent their sons from faraway countries. Wipe away your tears. Your sons are now lying in our bosom and are at peace. Words, softly spoken, yet echoing across generations. So tonight, if you find yourself wandering the cliffs of Gallipoli and dream, and you see a lone figure watching the horizon, silent, steady, it might be him, still there, still holding the line, and the listener drifts gently back into a quieter space of reflection, not out of duty, but because someone must. Soft breeze returns. A long breath of silence. The segment slows to stillness. And now, let's leave behind the footsteps of the living and descend deeper into the quiet, where letters lie folded in the earth and boots rest where they were last unlaced. The lost letters and forgotten graves of Gallipoli, the sounds of the sea. Again, a low hush of wind over empty hills. The creak of old wood, or perhaps canvas fluttering in the wind. Beneath the cliffs, beneath the trenches, beneath the ruins of fire and strategy. Gallipoli is still holding secrets, not the kind whispered in war rooms, but quieter ones, personal ones, left behind in haste, buried by the chaos of survival. Imagine walking this landscape now, not in 1915, but today. The men are long gone, and yet the ground still speaks. Archaeologists walk gently here, careful not to disturb, Their fingers brush aside dry soil and sea-blown sand, uncovering what time forgot. A belt buckle, bronze, etched with a rising sun, the emblem of the Australian Imperial Force. Its clasp. A notebook, softened by years, its pages still legible in places. The handwriting is neat, not rushed, as if the man writing it had not yet realized what was coming. He writes of the sun, of boredom, of hope. He sketches a tree he saw at dawn, just a few lines, and then the ink stops. Somewhere else, near what was once a forward Ottoman position, another item is gently uncovered. A thin silver amulet, tarnished, still warm to the touch from the sun-baked earth. It had once hung around a young soldier's neck. Inside, a folded scrap of cloth, perhaps a prayer, perhaps a name. There is no record of him, but this was his. A piece of him. It sees the light again. These are not relics of empires, not monuments of conquest. They are fragments of people, of moments, paused, buttons, cartridges, tins, tied with old string, found in rusted tins, or wrapped in oilcloth. Some are finished, others trail off mid-sentence, interrupted by something. One letter from a New Zealander named Thomas begins, "Dear Ellie, the sea is bluer than I imagined. We landed before dawn, and that's it. No signature, no closing. The rest of the page is stained, unreadable. In a hollow near the base of Chunuk Bair, a water canteen is found. Its metal is pocked with age, but the initials remain. SK. The team who finds it doesn't know who SK was, but they cleaned the canteen gently. They place it in a case, and in their report, they write, it still held water, after 87 years, as if the soldier was just on his way back. The Earth's here, remembers, more than we do. Boot prints long vanished are pressed into its memory. The clink of buttons, the shuffle of worn-out leather, still echoes softly, and in the breeze, sometimes, a voice. Or perhaps that's imagination. Or perhaps it's something else. One excavation reveals a carefully carved piece of trench art. Its lid scorched but intact. Inside, a playing card. The Queen of Hearts, folded neatly. No one knows what it meant. A joke, a charm, a love. It doesn't matter. What matters is that someone carried it. Through heat, through flies, through fear, and left it here for us to find. There are graves, too, lined in rows where names are known, and scattered lone markers where they are not, crosses, crescents, sometimes just stones, sometimes nothing at all. The silence around them is heavy, but not cruel. It's the silence of finality, of stories that ended and waited 100 years to be heard. One archaeologist, speaking softly into his recorder, once said, "It's as if the land is exhaling, letting these men come back into the light." He pauses, then adds, "But only briefly." Then it covers them again, gently. So now, as you lie there, eyes closed, picture yourself standing on a sunlit ridge. The breeze carries the scent of wild herbs. Your foot nudges something half-buried. You reach down, brush away the dust, and hold a piece of a life once lived. A name, a note, a hand-carved ring. You don't know who they were, but you know they were here. And in this quiet moment, you remember them. Silence returns, deep and slow. The sounds fade, replaced by stillness, almost like the inside of a museum, or the moment before sleep. And now, let's rise from the trenches. Let's climb out of the graves and walk slowly into the velvet halls of power, where war was decided. Over tea and polished boots. Tea, maps, and misjudgments. The war rooms of London and Constantinople begin with the gentle tick of a clock, footsteps on polished floors, the clink of porcelain, a leather chair creaking ever so slightly as someone leans back, far from Gallipoli's dust and trenches, in the cities that never smelled gunpowder. There were other rooms. Cool, quiet, comfortable. Let us walk softly now into these rooms. Close the door behind us and listen. In London, it is late afternoon. Somewhere behind the whitewashed facades of Whitehall, tea is being poured. Delicate cups, silver spoons, men in tailored coats, leaning over maps. The war in Gallipoli is small on these pages, outlined in blue pencil, curving arrows, margin notes, distances misunderstood. The men here are intelligent. They believe in their decisions. They speak with certainty, but they do not smell the rot of wet boots. They do not hear the flies. They do not lie awake at night wondering if their water is clean. Instead, they light cigars. They circle phrases like acceptable losses, and they write reports that glide across polished desks. Elsewhere, across the sea, in Constantinople, Istanbul, the Ottoman war room breathes with similar rhythms. Taller ceilings, but the same silence when things go wrong. Men in fezzes and medals lean over their own maps. They too drink tea, strong, black, sweetened, and calculation. Some argue, some murmur. Some write reports that will be ignored. A few glance out the window towards the boss. as if the sea might offer answers. There is something oddly universal in these rooms. The sound of a pen scratching paper, the hush when a telegram arrives, the soft clearing of a throat before bad news is spoken aloud. One officer in London scribbles in his notebook. Landing progress remains limited. Resistance stronger than expected. Recommend continued pressure. He signs his name, pushes his chair back, and goes home. To supper. To a fireplace. What do these men dream of? Perhaps of victory, or legacy, or of being remembered well. Rarely, if ever, do they dream of the men in the trenches, not because they are cruel, far in miles, far in imagination, far in consequence. It is easier, sometimes, to command from distance. The figures become numbers. The trenches become coordinates. The soldiers... And yet, there is irony here. Because the decisions made in these warm, clean rooms had consequences written in sweat and blood and silence. A slightly misjudged landing, an underestimated ridge, a delayed resupply. Each choice echoed down to the men who had no choice at all. Still, the rhythm continues. One report replaces another. One map is swapped for a newer one. And the war, this abstract, grinding machine, moves forward. Until it doesn't. Until someone, somewhere, finally says the word, withdrawal. In London, it is said quietly, the campaign did not meet expectations. In Constantinople, we held, a victory whispered, not shouted, no parades, no fireworks, only lists of dead, of missing, of questions unanswered. And after the meetings ended, the boots were shined again, the cigars lit, the next front prepared. But Gallipoli, it lingered, in the shadows of decision, in the ink of forgotten maps, in the quiet pause before a minister speaks. Tonight, as you drift further into rest, imagine those war rooms now, empty, dust motes, drifting through shafts of afternoon sun, maps curled at the corners, cups still faintly stained with old tea. The men are gone. The voice is silent, but the consequences still echo. Footsteps fade into silence. The ticking clock slows. A final breath before closing. And now, we leave them all behind. The decisions, all gently folded away, so you can sleep. Conclusion. The silence after the guns begin with deep, soft ambient silence. A slow breeze, stillness. And now, let it all fade. The dust-choked trenches, the quiet commands above the cliffs, the rusted trinkets buried in dry soil, the polished boots in distant halls. Let them all settle, like dust in the sunlight, like waves folding into shore, like the hush that comes when the last cannon has fired. You've traveled across time tonight, not to relive battles, but to feel the slow rhythm of human endurance, the shape of a day when survival was the only measure of success, the shape of a war that never quite made sense. What happened at Gallipoli did not end with a bang. It ended with a slow, reluctant silence, a quiet withdrawal, a final footstep into the sea, and the long forgetting that followed. But the cliffs remember, and so does the earth, in its quiet way, in the names carved in stone, in the stories not told, but hinted at. You've heard some of them tonight, whispered across the distance. Not for excitement, but for understanding, for stillness. Now, let the trenches go. Let the ridges and cliffs drift into dream. Let the men, both known and nameless, find their rest. And let yourself join them in stillness, in quiet, in peace. You are not in a trench now. You are not waiting for water. You are not listening for gunfire. You are safe. You are warm. And you are home. Final ambient fade. The last whisper of wind. No music. Just stillness. Thank you for being here. Thank you for remembering. And now, sleep well. Sleep deeply. The past is quiet now. You can be, too. For boring history for sleep. Soft, fade in. Distant waves, warm ambient tone. You've been listening to Boring History for Sleep, where the past moves slowly and gently fades into dreams. If you're still awake, that's okay. There's no rush to sleep. With more quiet voices, more forgotten places, and stories that wait patiently in the dark. Until next time, sleep softly and sleep well.